I put humbuckers in a Strat Fender guitar, and it doesn't sound at all like a Les Paul. Why is that? Okay, so there's probably many of you who are like, well, obviously it's not going to be the same because one's a Strat and one's a Les Paul. However, in just about, no, I could say every video having to do with humbuckers in Fender guitars, there will always be people in the comments like, that's not a real Tele, that's not a real Strat, because you put humbuckers in it, or it's some kind of like, my favorite one is it's like the guitar wasn't meant to be that way, or whatever, who cares. Anyway, when you put humbuckers in a Strat or a Tele, it's never going to sound like a Les Paul. So that whole, you might as well just get a Les Paul thing, doesn't even apply. Completely different. And we're going to talk about why. It's an interesting thing. A couple of things. Before we start this conversation, hit the like button. Even if you don't agree with me, hit the like button anyway, because it helps you also. It helps my channel, but it also helps you because it gives you more content that you like more guitar content. Not just this video, but other ones too. So do that. The other thing is, these pickups, the Dylan Talks Tone DAFs, are at dylantalkstone.com. There's a link to them below. They're killer pickups. You heard a little bit of them there. There's a lot more to them than just that. They're pretty awesome. Okay, let's discuss the difference between a Fender guitar and with humbuckers in it and a Les Paul. Very first thing that we need to talk about, and everybody's going to talk about tremolo versus not, and maybe a Tele is more or less, whatever. The biggest thing is the scale length. So on a guitar, the scale length is the distance from the nut to the saddle down here on the high E, and so that on a Fender guitar is going to be 25.5 inches. On a Gibson Les Paul or an SG is going to be 24.75. Okay, so why does scale length matter? When you pluck the string, it produces a transverse wave that travels down to the nut and comes back. But as it does that, it does it in a particular, I don't want to say rhythm, but okay. If a static string is vibrating, an open string like this, okay, there are dead spots and live spots along that string. They're called nodes and antinodes, okay? And the way you identify them is you take from here to here and you divide it in half. Then you take from there to there and you divide it in half. And then you take there from there and you divide it in half, okay? Now what's interesting about it is that from here to here, and then let's say from here to here is about half, and then from here to here is about half. On those points, the string doesn't vibrate as much as halfway in between those points. It's a really simplistic way of explaining this, but the reason it matters is because where the pickups are in relation to the quote-unquote dead spots or less vibrating spots than the other ones. It's not exactly the right terms. People are going to get in the comments and tell me I'm saying this wrong, but I'm trying to keep it simple. That affects where you put the pickups along the string. So there is thought gone into if I move the pickup a half inch this way or an inch this way, okay, where it sounds the best. But if the scale length is shorter, so let's say we cut 3/4 of an inch, which is what a Fender is, we cut 3/4 of an inch off this, or a Gibson, 3/4 of an inch off this string, then all of a sudden everything changes. The frets get closer together, okay, which changes. So I don't know if you know that or not, but when you change scale length, it's not just the entire length of the guitar. The frets actually accordion together. So a shorter scale length guitar from here to here is actually skinnier, less space. The whole thing squishes up. That changes everything. So then that changes where the pickup gets placed in those nodes or antinodes. Put them on the screen so you can kind of get a visualization of this, even though in real life it's not exactly what they do, but more or less. So that is also why an SG doesn't sound like a Les Paul, because the spacing, which we'll get to in a minute, but where the pickup is in relation to those nodes or antinodes is a different place on an SG versus a Les Paul. Same exact thing with a Fender. Because the scale length is different, then the pickups are in a different spot in relation to those nodes and antinodes. The distance between the two pickups is different on a Les Paul versus a Fender. Again, placement under wherever that node versus antinode is, half the string, half that distance, half that distance, half that on down. That also, so if you were to examine this in comparison to a Les Paul, it would be in a different place. The other thing is the distance between the two pickups is different. So the distance between the two pickups on a Les Paul versus an SG is different. The distance between a Strat and a Tele with humbuckers in it is different. It's all different. So none of those guitars are going to sound the same because of the way the string vibrates over the pickup. Because the way the string vibrates over the pickup is the number one key to how this all works in the first place. Now we could go on and on into, you could say, well, I thought you were going to use a Tele for this video because in your last video about Gibson versus Epiphone, I mentioned that I was going to use a Tele. Well, I forgot that I didn't have a Tele when I said that. Out of habit, I say Tele because I have Teles a lot, but I don't right now. But I had this guitar, and I was like, all right, well, we're going to put humbuckers in it. So last night during our Patreon hangout, we did it live. We actually built up a pick guard. We installed the pick guard. We did that all live in real time. It took about an hour and a half. We did that on our Patreon live hangout. It was really, really fun. It was really cool. So anyway, now that it's done and you hear it, and you heard it in the beginning, it doesn't sound like a Les Paul, and that's why. It will never sound like a Les Paul. On a Strat, the other thing, obviously, is going to be the tremolo system in the back, right? So the tremolo system in the back, and when you float the bridge, now I don't have it floated here. The client that is ending up with this guitar, we're gonna leave it flat for him, but that is also going to make a difference. The other thing that's going to make a difference is the break angle of the string. So on a Fender guitar, the break angle of the string is really, really sharp. It goes straight over the string and then back through the body. On a Les Paul, as we know, it goes from the tune-o-matic bridge out to the stop bar tailpiece. That break angle is different. That affects the downforce, the amount of downforce on the breakover right here at the saddle, which affects the tone as well. So all of those things matter. We could get into wood, we could get into construction, we could get into bolt-on versus glued-on set necks. All of that may have a factor, but the number one most important thing is the scale length and the distance between the pickups, and then the distance, oh, here's the other thing too. The distance from the pickup to the saddle. And what's interesting about this is on a Strat versus a Tele, it's the same, or very close. But from a Strat to a Les Paul or a Tele to a Les Paul, it's not the same. So the difference between the pickup, from the pickup to the saddle, is not the same distance. And as you probably know, when you flip your pickups, further away from the saddle, you get more low frequencies, and closer to the saddle, you get more high frequencies and more mid-range. So if we were to move the pickup this way, closer, which it is on a Strat or a Tele, even if it's a humbucker, it's going to give you more, it's going to still kind of sound like a Strat or a Tele. I don't know if you noticed that when you heard this, but it still kind of sounds like a Strat, even though it has humbuckers in it. In the neck position, in the middle position, it sounds like a Tele in the middle position. And in the bridge, it kind of sounds like a Tele. Not really, but kind of, you know what I mean? It's closer to a Tele than it is to a Les Paul. That's because of the architecture of all of this scale length stuff. It's really kind of cool. And the reason I bring it up is because so many people want to spend so much time comparing stuff. Like, how do you make this the same as that? Well, why can't we just allow everything to exist in its own little world and be its own flavor? Which is exactly what a Strat is with humbuckers in it, or a Tele with humbuckers in it. It's just a little bit different flavor. And if you're a 25.5-inch scale guy or gal, you may just like that scale length of a guitar because The tension of the strings is different, you know, because as you shorten the scale length, like to a Les Paul, they get a little slinkier. They feel, the 25.5-inch feels a little different. And of course, all of the neck profiles that come with Fender guitars are a little different, obviously. So all of those things, if you like the way a Fender guitar feels, put humbuckers in it. And don't let those jokers on Facebook tell you you can't. This is a fun one because it's so controversial to so many people. I think it's cool. I think you should just try any combination in any guitar. One of the other videos I want to do, there's a couple other videos I want to do related to this, is I was actually playing this guitar this morning and I was thinking, man, I have to like really juice the amp up more. Like it's just different. These pickups, these DAFs are lower output than say the P90 that's in my SG. And a lot of people think that because it's a single coil, it's a lower output pickup. But P90s are actually higher output. So we might do a comparison between this guitar and that guitar for output purposes, talking about how you have to set up your amp different and stuff. That's a really cool thing too. Just kind of down the whole rabbit hole of the differences between these guitars and why you pick a different flavor, even though it seems that it should be the same. It's not. It's really fun stuff. I really like this stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, this guitar has to get shipped off this week, so maybe I will shoot that video real quick before it goes. The P90 versus the DAF thing, since I have this guitar handy. And we'll do that. Make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button. Make sure you check out the Patreon and the little join button that's down there, I think, because we're doing some cool stuff for you all, early content, all that kind of stuff. And I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next video. Get in the comments. Let me know, do you have a humbucker that quote-unquote, guitar that quote-unquote shouldn't have humbuckers in it? Or what crazy pickup designs and like combinations that are quote-unquote unconventional do you have, or that have you tried that you like or that you want to try? Maybe we could do that too, some weird combination of something. That'd be kind of fun. Let me know in the comments.